Hi team, welcome to Additional Sheet. In this video we will go through Tailwind CSS Top 50 multiple choice questions and answers. Let's start our video. What is the purpose of the BG Blue 500 class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, sets the text color to blue. Option B, adds a blue background to the element. Option C, styles the border color as blue. Option D, increases the font size to 500. The correct answer is option B, adds a blue background to the element. How can you add a 2-pixel border to the top and bottom of an element in Tailwind CSS? Option A, border to border T border B. Option B, border to border top border bottom. Option C, border T to border B2. Option D, border to border Y2. The correct answer is option A, border to border T border B. What does the text center class do in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds center alignment to the text. Option B, sets the text color to center. Option C, styles the text as a center element. Option D, adds a shadow effect to the text. The correct answer is option A, adds center alignment to the text. How can you apply padding to all sides of an element using Tailwind CSS? Option A, padding all. Option B, padding X. Option C, P all. Option D, P. The correct answer is option D, P. What is the purpose of the Hover BG Gray 300 class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds a gray background on hover. Option B, sets the hover state color to gray. Option C, styles the border as gray on hover. Option D, adds a shadow effect on hover. The correct answer is option A, adds a gray background on hover. How can you make an element hidden on small screens and visible on medium screens in Tailwind CSS? Option A, hidden SM block MD hidden. Option B, hidden SM hidden MD block. Option C, invisible SM visible MD invisible. Option D, visible SM hidden MD visible. The correct answer is option A, hidden SM block MD hidden. Which class in Tailwind CSS is used to create a flex container? Option A, flex container. Option B, flex box. Option C, flex. Option D, flex parent. The correct answer is option C, flex. How can you set the font size of an element to 18 pixels using Tailwind CSS? Option A, text 18. Option B, font size 18. Option C, text base. Option D, text XL. The correct answer is option D, text XL. What is the purpose of the BG gradient to R class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds a gradient background to the right. Option B, sets the background color to a radial gradient. Option C, styles the border as a gradient. Option D, adds a shadow effect with a gradient. The correct answer is option A, adds a gradient background to the right. How can you apply margin to the top and bottom of an element using Tailwind CSS? Option A, margin TB. Option B, MTB. Option C, my. Option D, my. The correct answer is option C, my. What does the text red 600 class in Tailwind CSS represent? Option A, sets the text color to red. Option B, adds a red border to the text. Option C, styles the text as a heading with color red. Option D, sets the background color of the text to red. The correct answer is option A, sets the text color to red. How can you apply different padding values to the top, right, bottom, and left sides of an element using Tailwind CSS? Option A. Option B. Option C. Option D. The correct answer is option C. What does the hover text green 500 class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds a green border to the text on hover. Option B, sets the text color to green on hover. Option C, styles the text as a link with color green on hover. Option D, sets the background color of the text to green on hover. The correct answer is option B, sets the text color to green on hover. How can you create a flex container with items aligned vertically using Tailwind CSS? Option A, flex row. Option B, flex col. Option C, flex wrap. Option D, flex v. The correct answer is option B, flex col. What is the purpose of the font semibold class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, sets the font size to a medium weight. Option B, represents the font color as semibold. Option C, adds a shadow effect to the font. Option D, sets the font weight to semibold. The correct answer is option D, sets the font weight to semibold. How can you make an element invisible but still take up space in the layout using Tailwind CSS? Option A, hidden. Option B, invisible. Option C, opacity 0. Option D, hidden opacity 0. The correct answer is option C, opacity 0. What does the BG cover class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds a cover image to the background. Option B, sets the background color to cover the element. Option C, styles the border as a cover. Option D, adds a shadow effect with a cover. The correct answer is option D, adds a shadow effect with a cover. How can you apply different margin values to the top, right, bottom, and left sides of an element using Tailwind CSS? Option A. Option B. Option C. Option D. The correct answer is option C. What is the purpose of the BG opacity 50 class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, sets the background color to opacity 50%. Option B, adds a shadow effect with opacity 50%. Option C, styles the border as opacity 50%. Option D, sets the text color with opacity 50%. The correct answer is option D, sets the text color with opacity 50%. How can you create a responsive layout where columns stack vertically on small screens and horizontally on large screens using Tailwind CSS? Option A, flex col. Option B, flex flex row. Option C, flex flex wrap. Option D, flex flex col MD flex row. The correct answer is option D, flex flex col MD flex row. What does the Space X4 class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds a 4-pixel margin between child elements horizontally. Option B, sets the horizontal spacing to 4 pixels. Option C, adds a 4-pixel padding between child elements horizontally. Option D, sets the horizontal space to 4 pixels between child elements. The correct answer is option D, sets the horizontal space to 4 pixels between child elements. How can you center an element both horizontally and vertically using Tailwind CSS? Option A, center center X center Y. Option B, MX auto my auto. Option C, justify center item center. Option D, flex center. The correct answer is option C, justify center item center. What is the purpose of the divide Y2 class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds a 2-pixel border between child elements vertically. Option B, sets the vertical spacing to 2 pixels between child elements. Option C, adds a 2-pixel padding between child elements vertically. Option D, sets the vertical space to 2 pixels between child elements. The correct answer is option A, adds a 2-pixel border between child elements vertically. How can you apply a box shadow to an element with a depth of 2 in Tailwind CSS? Option A, shadow 2. Option B, shadow MD. Option C, shadow LG. Option D, shadow. The correct answer is option B, shadow MD. What does the order first class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, moves the element to the first position in a flex container. Option B, styles the first child element with a specific order. Option C, adds a shadow effect to the first child element. Option D, sets the text color of the first child element. The correct answer is option A, moves the element to the first position in a flex container. How can you create a responsive font size that increases with each screen size using Tailwind CSS? Option A, text SM text MD text LG text XL. Option B, text XS SM text SM MD text MD LG text LG XL text XL. Option C, font XS SM font SM MD font MD LG font LG XL font XL. Option D, size XS SM size SM MD size MD LG size LG XL size XL. The correct answer is option B, text XS SM text SM MD text MD LG text LG XL text XL. What does the underline class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds an underline to the text. Option B, sets the text color to underline. Option C, styles the text as an underline element. Option D, adds a shadow effect to the text. The correct answer is option A, adds an underline to the text. How can you apply a rotate transformation to an element by 45 degrees in Tailwind CSS? Option A, transform, rotate 45. Option B, rotate 45. Option C, transform, rotate 45. Option D, rotate transform 45. The correct answer is option B, rotate 45. What does the W1 by 2 class in Tailwind CSS represent? Option A, sets the width to 1 pixel. Option B, adds a 1 pixel border to the element. Option C, sets the width to 50 of the parent container. Option D, adds a 50 pixel margin to the element. The correct answer is option C, sets the width to 50 of the parent container. How can you create a button with rounded corners in Tailwind CSS? Option A, rounded. Option B, rounded MD. Option C, rounded LG. Option D, rounded full. The correct answer is option A, rounded. What does the border T2 class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds a 2 pixel border to the top of the element. Option B, sets the top padding to 2 pixels. Option C, adds a 2 pixel margin to the top of the element. Option D, styles the top border with a width of 2 pixels. The correct answer is option A, adds a 2 pixel border to the top of the element. How can you apply different text colors to an element based on its state, such as hover or focus, in Tailwind CSS? Option A, text hover red text focus blue. Option B, hover text red 500 focus text blue 500. Option C, text red hover text blue focus text green. Option D, text color red hover text color blue focus text color green. The correct answer is option B, hover text red 500 focus text blue 500. What does the grid calls 3 class in Tailwind CSS represent? Option A, creates a 3-column grid. Option B, sets the column width to 3 pixels. Option C, adds 3 pixel padding between grid columns. Option D, styles the columns with a width of 3. The correct answer is option A, creates a 3-column grid. How can you apply a different background color to an element based on its state, such as hover or focus, in Tailwind CSS? Option A, BG hover red BG focus blue. Option B, hover BG red 500 focus BG blue 500. Option C, BG red hover BG blue focus BG green. Option D, BG color red hover BG color blue focus BG color green. The correct answer is option B, hover BG red 500 focus BG blue 500. What does the space Y4 class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds a 4-pixel margin between child elements vertically. Option B, sets the vertical spacing to 4 pixels between child elements. Option C, adds a 4-pixel padding between child elements vertically. Option D, sets the vertical space to 4 pixels between child elements. The correct answer is option A, adds a 4-pixel margin between child elements vertically. How can you make an element take up the full width of its parent container in Tailwind CSS? Option A, W full. Option B, full width. Option C, width full. Option D, W 100. The correct answer is option A, W full. What is the purpose of the transition transform class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds a transition effect to the transform property. Option B, styles the text as a transitional element. Option C, sets the transition duration for transformations. Option D, adds a shadow effect with a transition. The correct answer is option A, adds a transition effect to the transform property. How can you apply a grayscale filter to an image in Tailwind CSS? Option A, filter grayscale. Option B, grayscale 100. Option C, filter grayscale 100. Option D, grayscale. The correct answer is option C, filter grayscale 100. What does the justify between class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, aligns items to the left and right within a flex container. Option B, distributes items with space between them horizontally in a flex container. Option C, centers items horizontally in a flex container. Option D, aligns items to the baseline within a flex container. The correct answer is option B, distributes items with space between them horizontally in a flex container. How can you apply a rotate transformation to an element by 90 degrees in Tailwind CSS? Option A, transform rotate 90. Option B, rotate 90. Option C, transform rotate 90. Option D, rotate transform 90. The correct answer is option A, transform rotate 90. What does the H64 class in Tailwind CSS represent? Option A, adds a 64 pixel margin to the element. Option B, sets the height to 64 pixels. Option C, adds a 64 pixel padding to the element. Option D, styles the height with a value of 64. The correct answer is option B, sets the height to 64 pixels. How can you apply a blur filter to an element in Tailwind CSS? Option A, filter blur. Option B, blur 100. Option C, filter blur 100. Option D, blur. The correct answer is option C, filter blur 100. What is the purpose of the border B4 class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds a 4-pixel border to the bottom of the element. Option B, sets the bottom margin to 4 pixels. Option C, adds a 4-pixel padding to the bottom of the element. Option D, styles the bottom border with a width of 4. The correct answer is option A, adds a 4-pixel border to the bottom of the element. How can you create a gradient background from top to bottom using Tailwind CSS? Option A, BG gradient to B. Option B, BG gradient to TB. Option C, BG gradient to bottom. Option D, BG gradient bottom. The correct answer is option A, BG gradient to B. What does the Flex Shrink 0 class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, prevents the element from shrinking. Option B, allows the element to shrink with a factor of 0. Option C, styles the text with a shrink effect. Option D, adds a shadow effect with a shrink factor of 0. The correct answer is option A, prevents the element from shrinking. How can you apply a scale transformation to an element by 1.5 times in Tailwind CSS? Option A, transform scale 1.5. Option B, scale 1.5. Option C, transform scale 1.5. Option D, scale transform 1.5. The correct answer is option B, scale 1.5. What does the BG opacity 75 class in Tailwind CSS do? Option A, adds a shadow effect with opacity 75. Option B, styles the text as a background with opacity 75. Option C, sets the background color to opacity 75. Option D, adds a border with opacity 75. The correct answer is option C, sets the background color to opacity 75. How can you make an element take up the full height of its parent container in Tailwind CSS? Option A, H full. Option B, full height. Option C, height full. Option D, H100. The correct answer is option A, H full. What is the purpose of the border L8 class in Tailwind CSS? Option A, adds an 8-pixel border to the left of the element. Option B, sets the left margin to 8 pixels. Option C, adds an 8-pixel padding to the left of the element. Option D, styles the left border with a width of 8. The correct answer is option A, adds an 8-pixel border to the left of the element. How can you apply a translate transformation to an element by 20 pixels in the X direction in Tailwind CSS? Option A, transform translate X20. Option B, translate X20. Option C, transform translate X20. Option D, translate transform X20. The correct answer is option B, translate X20. Thank you. Please visit Additional Sheet website.